Welcome back, music lovers, to another exciting edition of Battle of the Ballads, and a happy new year to you all as we venture into a new year of 2018. So while you've traveled forward, we're going backwards a little bit. And it's been a wild journey together, gentlemen. We have 3 years left, but we only have 1 year until we have to figure out our best song of the decade. So kind of interesting there. Also, to call myself out, my math was completely and utterly wrong when it came to lining up with the new year.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I couldn't have been more wrong if I tried. And the funny thing is, Zoe pointed it out to me when we were talking the other day. So I thought you were going to be done by New Year's with this. And I said, yeah. And Dad can't do math. So, hey, everybody, I'm Dan, can't do math. We had a couple entries this week in terms of recommendations for Song of the Year. My guy, Dan Askey, gave me the theme song to 1963's Batman series. Alan Sadler came in with This Mountain from, and I don't want to mess this up, but I know I will, Fauzia. And Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Please do it in all caps. You said she's a Moroccan-Canadian singer-songwriter, so rock out to her. Horses from Keith Urban. She said not released as a single, but one of her favorite Keith Urban songs of the last few years. Better Now from Posty. This Is America from Childish Gambino. River from Josh Groban. No Tears Left to Cry from Ariana Grande. And Justin came in with, man, you posted this on a bad day, eh? And I did indeed. Rest in Power, Betty White. This was not the ideal day to post that. However, I did it before the terrible news came in, and just what an amazing woman she was. But yeah, so I did. I posted on a rough day. He said he started with a short list of 30 because the year was a great year for music, as he said the prior week. And he said that it was too difficult to pare down his usual 10, so he cheated and he gave us a 3-song run plus 10. And then he said afterwards, for shits and gigs, he created a second 10 list that he liked better than his 2017 list and stacks up well against his other lists. And he said that he wasn't kidding when he thought 2017 sucked in comparison to 2018. So he gave us Panic, Hey Look Ma, I Made It, High Hopes, and Say Amen for his 3-song run. Marshmallow with Bastille, Happier. The 1975, Love It If We Made It, Imagine Dragons, Natural. Muse, Pressure. Also, I love that he gave us a 3-song run right off the bat. That's pretty awesome. Gambino with This Is America. So we have 2 of that now. Vampire Weekend, Harmony Hall, 21 Pilots, Chlorine, Churches with Miracle, Post Malone with Stay, and Juice WRLD, another RIP, Lucid Dreams. So those were what Ellen and Justin gave us. And I'm not sure if you are our only 2 listeners still, or just the final 2 playing along, as we have gotten out of the years that people really cherished in music. But did Chirp have anything this week for us?
Chirp did, because much like how he loved 2017, he loved 2018 as well. But I have to issue an apology to Chirp. One of the bands he mentioned last week was Haim, and I'm blanking which track, but I forgot to mention Haim, to which case he suggested we do an episode that's just all shit we forgot. And I told him we kind of half did it, but maybe when we do the format, we'll do like complete artists, because I know like I didn't mention the band Mayday, the album Bushido Karaoke, which is one of my all-time favorite albums, but it's a Wikipedia issue that they're not big enough to have ever made it down to Wikipedia. So
my problem, and as we've talked about doing those, is that I forgot, or I can't remember what I forgot at this point, unfortunately, and I wasn't taking notes, unfortunately.
You should be taking notes, Daniel.
I know, I suck.
And he also wanted to give you props for the Taylor song. He said he would have picked it, but it was a shit album, so he didn't pick it. And he wanted me to weigh, like, Normal was the song he would have said for a song of the year last year. He just wanted me to press upon you guys just how important that song is to him and how much it means to him. So we may only have the 3 of them watching, but they are fully engaged, the 3 of them. So I really appreciate that.
In fact, I feel like they've gotten more engaged as the timelines have gone on.
Yeah, there's like legit research and
dropped
shit.
Off.
Like Ellen texted me last night and said, "Hey, I didn't see your post. Oh, I just gotta scroll through your shit." Like she was actually feeling guilty about not putting anything up. So
that's awesome.
Yes, we appreciate all of you. I mean, that the investment is incredible.
Yeah. which is just great. But yeah, so Chirp's list for 2018. How do you know it's not Armadillo Shells by Hot Mulligan? I think this is the 4th or 5th time he's had a Hot Mulligan song since he's come aboard fully with us. Song for Sasha Banks by the Mountain Goats, which this is I feel like every year Chirp reminds me of a song that I'd forgotten they'd come out this year. And since it was released as a single, I'd forgotten this was out there from the Mountain Goats. But Sasha Banks literally asked John of the Mountain Goats to write a song after he the chant about her, and he did. And cool. It's just a really, really great song. Sucker's Prayer off the Decemberists, which Joe had mentioned before recording this to me, how the Wikipedia article for the albums this year was lacking, and it definitely was, because the Decembers aren't even listed on the album or on the Wikipedia, and so I would have completely missed them this year if it weren't for Chirp.
And what really sucks about that for this year, the last, I think, probably 5 years we've done, I've had enough time to go through the Wikipedia albums released and then also go through the song facts, because that will pick up, like, if there's a couple that have fallen through the cracks that don't make it to Wikipedia, I at least might see a single from an artist, be like, oh, okay, let me look up that album and see if I can find something. But I didn't have time to do that this year. So my list is literally about 8 total artists and like just a handful of songs. So mine will go quick.
Yeah. Little Changes from Frank Turner. The Freaks from the Menzingers, which was a EP, I believe, from the Menzingers, not a full album there. Stuck, Kaylee Goldsworthy. Lonely Eyes, The Front and Bottoms, and Me and My Dog from Boy Genius. I'm glad Chirp likes Boy Genius. I really do not. Ghost of Mariatos from Disco Inc. Sister Cities from the Wonder Years. Applause from Tiny Moving Parts. Elevator to the Gallows from Census Fails. And he said, Parked Out by the Lake from Dean Summerwood, Just for the Drinking Game. I don't know the song. I don't know the drinking game. I did listen to the first verse of the song, so does Country. So maybe Ellen and Chirp can play the drinking game over Zoom one night together. So, and then he says, of course, one of my favorite albums of all time came out this year, Schmaltz from Spanish Love Songs. I could pick the entire album, but I'll just say Beer and NyQuil, parentheses, Hold It Together for tonight, because that combo is sounding nice right now. So Chirp picked a song for a drinking game and then picked a song about Beer and NyQuil. So love it, Chirp. Definitely not setting a brand for yourself there.
Excellent. Now, Gregory, what do we have for debuts of the year?
Well, like I said about the Wikipedia, the debuts were not too hard. Also, I didn't spend too much time on it, folks. I just usually I'll go through a second time to make sure I didn't miss anything that should have been obvious and then still miss something. But this time I only went through once. But Felix Jahan is a German DJ who had, I think, 2 international hits or something off that album. Fickle Friends, a British pop collective. And they're on there only because I love the name Fickle Friends. And the fact that they're a British pop collective and not a band, also great. But some Dojo Cat, who became huge after this album. Hilary Kiyoko, Cardi B, who also became huge after this album. I heard I think the single came out at the end of 2017, the first one there, and it was everywhere. I went to a wedding it was played maybe a dozen times that night. Bishop Briggs, who's a Scottish singer-songwriter and had, I think, 1 crossover hit. Pooh Bear, Illuminati Hotties, which was on Wikipedia, which is weird for such a weird Wikipedia year. They've had a couple notable years during the pandemic. Paste has been all about them and a couple of the music websites, but I've kind of found it weird that their debut album was listed on here when so many others aren't. But I enjoy Illuminati, so not a bad thing. Georgia Smith, who British songstress, she comes across my release radar all the time on Spotify. Fantastic voice. BB Rexa, and then Amy Shark were the ones I caught. I don't know if there's anything that you guys know off the top of your heads, but those are the debuts I saw.
The only one I think you missed that I'm aware of is the tandem of Shaggy and Sting releasing an album together that was absolutely made for the summer and was fine.
I almost put that on there, but Sting was originally supposed to do a duet with I'm blanking on her name right now, Adele. That never happened, so I held that against him. Also, for the most part, unless they like form me a supergroup that lasts for a while, I have not listed a lot of artists combining for albums because it's been. I mean, there's several of them throughout the years that I just did not listen, but that one might be one of the funniest combinations.
You wouldn't believe how many people I tried to get to listen to that album that summer, and without even listening to a note, they're like, "Get the fuck out of here!" And I'm like, "No, you got to put this on." And we're at like parties. I'm like, "This album is banging," and it's middle somewhere outside. I'm like, get out! You stop touching the music. I'm like, "You got to hear it." And then I finally got a friend to sit down and listen to it. He goes, "Nice, I like this." And this is after a whole summer of fighting with everybody just to listen to a song. It's a banging album. I highly recommend folks listen to Shaggy and Sting.
I might have missed it, but I didn't hear Post, although I think technically this is the first album.
This first album, he had the mixtapes before.
Yeah, this is the first actual album release, Beer Bongs and Bentleys.
Because I think we heard of Post like 4 years prior to this, and then he just kept appearing other places. And then
so and this album has a lot of those songs. Like this is when he actually released on an album Rockstar, Psycho, Better Now. I Fall Apart.
He did 2 college tours before he released that album, which is just wild.
And it was one of those, knowing it was like the first actual album, and I couldn't remember for sure if I'd mentioned one of the earlier EPs or not. But then I was like, we've been talking about Post for a few years on the show now, so I was like, whatever. It becomes harder with EPs and mixtapes and
in just this time period of music, right? Like we have a lot of people who are I mean, not quite yet in this year. I think probably next year in 2019 is when it first begins. But now you're having people being discovered on YouTube, where they have entire YouTube careers of music without ever or before ever releasing an album. You've got folks writing songs and being discovered now on TikTok. Like you have all of these new entryways or pathways into the music business that are non-traditional. And so like I'm sure, well, I already mentioned like my list is very lacking this year, but even with all the research in the world, we're still missing whole swaths of the music industry at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of that, did you have any punk goes for this year?
No, there's only one punk goes left, and it's in 2019. So we'll be back at it next year.
Excellent. So without that, what were your tracks of this year? I'm curious.
Yeah, so real short list, starting with something that's already been mentioned, Panic at the Disco. I find the history of Panic at the Disco kind of interesting because they reinvent their sound with almost every album. And for this one, it was just Brendan Urie. There was nobody else in the band anymore. And he leaned really heavily into pop in this one. And he does it really well. Like it's a departure from what he was doing or they were doing, but it's a nice album. So I've got listed here, Hey Look Ma, Made It, and Dancing Is Not a Crime. Dancing Not a Crime may be my favorite one off that album. It's just so much fun. Dance Gavin Dance, I think I've probably mentioned them before in past years. Post-hardcore band that I'm a big fan of, but they released the album Artificial Selection this year. And it's probably my favorite of their albums because there's just some really amazing songs on here. Suspended in This Disaster, Care, and Count Basie are probably my that's probably my 3-track run of the year on this one. Posty we talked about, Rockstar, Psycho, I Fall Apart, I already mentioned. Andrew McMahon and the Wilderness released another album this year. I think because they were released in such quick succession with Zombies on Broadway from the year prior. This one actually kind of passed me without me really listening to it as deeply as some of the other stuff. But the one track that has always stuck out to me from it is Teenage Rock Stars.
What's tough with the Andrew McMahon stuff though is it's like all of a sudden, like there's nothing, and then all of a sudden, boom, he has some social media posts like, "Hey, catch us on tour," and then boom, we have this album, and then it's like all just in this breath, and it's never released like, "Hey, you can pick it up on vinyl here, digital download here, whatever." It's just, "Hey, we have this music, and hopefully you can access it." And here's our next album, next tour. It's so wild,
Yes.
where they've gone, but it's like, I think at one point, because I saw them twice, and I'm like, I don't know what any of these songs are, and it's because they were an album that I had no idea, because I was on the previous one that they were talking about 2 days before. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, the last time I caught him live was before Zombies on Broadway was released. So at that point, it had only been the one solo album under the moniker Andrew McMahon of the Wilderness. He did some solo stuff in between Something Corporate and Jack's Mannequin, just under his own name. But it was mostly re-releases of Something Corporate stuff. But so I had a chance, like I had owned the album already. I knew all of that stuff. And then he did about a third of the show was Jack's Mannequin and Something Corporate songs. So I got lucky. I knew I knew the entire set list when I caught him live. But if I were to see him now, I probably wouldn't know everything.
Yeah, it wasn't until I saw him, because it was back-to-back shows. I saw him Buffalo and Rochester, actually pretty close to before the pandemic. And it wasn't until after the first show in Buffalo where I'm like, oh, there's a whole album I haven't heard yet, which I never knew about, which is odd because he's one, songwriter I've tracked throughout his entire career.
It makes sense though, because he toured pretty nonstop with Jack's Mannequin, and then of course got sick. So yeah, I probably wouldn't want to just be on social media or touring all the time. I'd probably want to do it pretty similar. Like when the inspiration hits, you record an album, then you go tour for that album, because that's where you make your money.
Well, let a fan know that the album exists, damn it.
Yeah, so the only reason I knew Zombies on Broadway was coming out was, I think, a friend of mine who also likes Andrew McMahon had posted about it on Facebook. And so I got, I think I was a pre-order for that one. And I never once saw anything about Upside Down Flowers, which is the one from this year. I caught the first single, Teenage Rock Stars, on my release radar, and that was it. Nothing else. But going on to my short list, that's like my long list for this year, and my short list is just as long. So starting with back to the Beer Bongs and Bentley, my favorite song off that is Better Now, so that made my short list. Dave Matthews Band released an album this year, and it contained the song Do You Remember, and that's one that Amanda listens to a lot, and so it gets stuck in my head every time it comes on. And Vance Joy also released an album this year. Specifically the song off it, I'm With You, is very meaningful to Amanda and I. We actually have a piece of artwork that she created that sits, it's actually in our bathroom hanging on the wall, that sits above the tub, that says I'm With You, and it's really nicely painted, that she created.
Oh, cool.
And then this was a tough year for me to actually pick a song of the year. Gregory and I talked a little bit before this. It comes down to, I think, importance and personal preference. So first off, I'm going to gush about the Coheed and Cambria album that came out this year for a couple of minutes here. This was released in October, I believe, of this year, and I took to it immediately. This is my favorite Coheed album, and for a while I couldn't quite figure out why. And I think in my mind, it's just the progression of the band, because at the time they actually took some criticism on because everything they do in this album we've heard before on previous Coheed albums, and it's referenced in a couple of different reviews and stuff I read around the time this came out. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because to me, they improved upon those things. Their composition, or at least Claudio's songwriting, has gotten progressively better with every album, and so has his vocals. And so I picked a couple of quotes from reviews that I think kind of capture my thoughts on it a little bit better, more eloquently, because I don't write that well. Stephen Hill from Louder Sound wrote, "One of this band's greatest gifts is their ability to coax all kinds of memorable hook lines and melodies out of and amongst their dense, sprawling sci-fi prog. And when the Unheavenly Creature soars, it's hard to imagine there's another band that can carry these two elements quite so perfectly. Stitched sound. row on Heavenly Creatures is by far their most well-rounded and complete album. It truly encompasses everything we've heard from Coheed and Cambria in the past, with new techniques that further establishing themselves as one of the most unique storytelling bands of our time. And then finally, from Sputnik Music, Vaxis kind of succeeds on every front without being a clear front runner on a single one. It lacks the diversity of Afterman, but attempts something like consistency, forgoes the rawness of the second stage Turbine Blade for a little bit of maturity and focus, and so on. And so like really just captures my thought on how I felt. And I've mentioned a little bit of the progression of this band from storytelling, vocals, instrumentation. And I really think that captures it. And so this entire track, or this entire album, there's 80 minutes of it, and it's worth every minute of it. It's hard to pick any songs, but my short list there: The Pavilion, Long Way Back, Love Protocol, True Ugly. And then my favorite off that is Toys. And this is really close with Childish Gambino's This Is America for Song of the Year. And again, it comes down to personal preference and how much this Coheed and Cambria album means to me versus what this song by Childish Gambino just means to a lot of the population. I have a feeling Gregory's gonna lean the other way, so I'm gonna go with the Coheed and Cambria Toys for my pick this year.
Got you. I love the breakdown of that and what it means to you and everything else. You know, when we set out to do this, it was determined each of our favorite song of the year, not necessarily the world's favorite song of the year. And so we get to tell each other we're wrong, and the world gets to tell us we're wrong, or our three listeners get to tell us. So that's what this journey's about, man. So I love it. Gregory, what do you got for us, my friend?
All right. So knowing there wasn't going to be a Punk Goes, I did covers again this week. So for me, Friday I'm in Love, Cure cover by Phoebe Bridgers. And I'd mentioned last week how throughout 2021, she was like all over the place with covers and features and everything. But this is a really good one with Friday I'm in Love. I think Pace this year, like she was 2 of their top 10 covers. This was number 5. I forget which one they had number 1. They were wrong because this one's better than wherever that one was. And then because this would have been 2018 would have been the 68th birthday of Tom Petty. And although he passed away before his 67th birthday, he passed away less than 3 weeks before his birthday. So I think there was still such a sense of loss and reverence to it that we didn't get the covers we got in 2018. And there was a lot of Petty covers out in 2018 to honor him in his birthday, which had been about a year after his passing when he turned 67. But the best one I heard was from a band called Blackberry Smoke featuring Amanda Shires. And I don't know anything about Blackberry Smoke other than this cover, but I just love the lead vocalist, his voice on this one. But they did a cover of You Got Lucky, which I think it's hard to say this one's underrated, but I think it is one of the more underrated Petty tracks because it's not a let's all sing this together loudly and have a good time. This one's one of those more withdrawn melodical Petty. One of those reminders of how great of a songwriter Petty really was. And he wasn't just a guy that did songs about weed and women stuff, but this cover of You Got Lucky is just absolutely beautiful and stellar. And if I had a few or less songs of this, I may have just put it in my short list.
So it's an interesting week to bring up all the Petty tributes for me personally, just because I just made it through the stories that Dave Grohl tells about his time with Tom Petty in his autobiography. So it's really interesting. His stories of like his personal time with him are really interesting and just lead credence to what a good guy Tom Petty was.
Yeah, and I mean earlier this year, was it Florida University gave Petty a doctorate in music, like posthumous. So like, and well earned. Rest in peace, Petty. Why does every week we talk about dead people? But
the history of music has a lot of them. I mean, the history of life has a lot of them too. But yes,
that's
what I was getting at, right? That's just
yeah. So those are my 2 covers. There are a lot of covers. I think Amanda Palmer did a really good cover of Mountain Goats that year too. That so got some praise, but like none of them stacked up to these two. I didn't think so. But yeah, so my list as a whole, Bodak Yellow by Cardi B. I won't defend it. Like it's just a song I really enjoy.
I don't know why it's so bad.
That might be part of the appeal of it to me, though. You know, sometimes that bad is good. I think the Janelle Monáe album that came out this year, it honestly, like, even though it came out in 2018, it feels like it's been longer than Electric Lady, which was what, 2014.
Absolutely.
So, but this was a really, really great album. Crazy Classic Life, Pink featuring Grimes, which not only a super catchy song, but great video. And then Make Me Feel are three of the tracks I really loved off that one. Ariana Grande, of course, had a banger of an album, but God is a Woman and Sweetener, the title track, are probably my two favorite off of those. I'm not like a huge Ariana Grande fan, but like when you put her on, I'm gonna bop to it because she is a bop.
I find
She's
that
like
every
the
time I say I'm
living-
not an Ariana Grande fan, I'm an Ariana Grande fan.
She's the living embodiment of a bop. So even if you're like not going out of your way to seek it, you're not mad it's on.
Yeah.
Jeff Rosenstock, who has been mentioned a lot lately because he releases basically an album every year since he burst on the scene. But Your Throat was one of the first songs I heard of his, but love it off of this album. And then he has a 9 out of 10, which is, or it could be read as 9/10 if you want to, but if you listen to the song, it's clearly like talking about a 9 out of 10. But it's just a more mellow, laid back song from him. That December's album, I'll Be Your Girl, is the album, and it's just a fantastic album. Severed, Everything is Awful, Sucker's Prayer, which Chirp had mentioned, and then the title track, I'll Be Your Girl, are all phenomenal. Not my favorite Frank Turner run album. I think I said that for the last two Frank Turner albums, but Little Changes and Be More Kind, I think, are both fantastic. And this is slightly different than a lot of the other Frank Turner albums because he was definitely going for something here. And he was going about trying to make the world a better out. Like the album's called Be More Kind for a reason, and that's what the music was supposed to be here. And I think these two tracks are really the epitome of it. And that's my 2-track run. I also thought about throwing on Let's Make America Great Again as my 3rd-track run, but there's just something about a British anarchist punk rocker doing a song about Let's Make America Great Again. And he's right. Like, of course, this is really about what the world had become too and what we led it to the election of Trump. So he's 100% right. And I could have, but it just felt something weird about that. So I just went with the 2-track run for this. The Wonder Years, Heaven's Gate, Sad and Sober, and Orange Grove are my two favorite off that album. Chirp's one of her favorite albums, that Spanish Love Song album, is really, really great. Sequels, remakes, and adaptations, one of the better of theirs. And then It's Not Interesting and Aloha to No One are two great tracks off those two. I think It's Not Interesting and Aloha to No One might be a 2-track run too, but I don't remember for sure. Charlie Bliss did not release an album, but they did release a single, Heaven, which isn't on the next album. So I threw it on here because it's a good track, not a great track. Diet Sig released an EP, and it's only a 2-track EP, but it's on a 4-track. They recorded the songs on 4-track, and those who have been with us know how much I love that early Bright Eyes 4-track unreleased stuff. And this just is in that sweet wheelhouse for me. The track Sleep Talk is just, it'd be a fantastic track, like recorded and cleaned up and everything, but I kind of love it on that fuzzy sounding 4-track. It's just fantastic. Jessie Reyes, an EP following her debut album, and Fuck Being Friends is just one of her better songs, and it being just on this EP. And the EP is not great, it's fun, but Fuck Being Friends is just fantastic. I'd mentioned Illuminati Hotties with the debut. Shape of My Hands is the first song of theirs I heard, and I kind of fell in love with them. And Press Death is another great one. Then local Pittsburgh band, Scratchy Blanket, it's a couple. And they released, I think it's a 3 or 4-track EP this year. And the song Sorry would be one of those. And then we kind of get into that, like, got their start and we were replacing the internet. Ashniko had released an EP the year before. But this year was the first Halloweeny. This is the worst of her Halloweenies, but it is still fun. Ashniko is not for everyone. She is kind of filthy at times, but like she owns who she is. And the Halloweenies series of tracks are just fantastic. Eels released an album, so you guys know I love it because the Eels are just phenomenal. But Rusty Pipes, You Are the Shining Light, and There I Said It are my favorite tracks. I love Eels when he gets dancey and fun. And then I love it when he's confessing his love and heartbreak at the same time. And There I Said It is exactly that. Like being the first one to say I love you is always this like tremendous thing in a relationship that you two will never have to experience again. But for those single folks out there like myself, you one day hope you're saying it again. So it is like this really tender, touching moment. For all the shit he has gone through in his life, it is amazing how many tender tracks he's able to write and not get bitter about it all. Then my short list, The Decemberists, Once in My Life, the Mountain Goats song for Sasha Banks. The fact that she called her shot and he did it for her is just fantastic. Janelle is Screwed, which features Zoe Kravitz.
Yes.
Which I apparently spelled with an X for some reason on my list. But yeah, that's it. Exactly. And then there's two songs I'm, of course, between, and Joe kind of helped me push one way or the other. But The Boy by the band Shannon and the Clams, they've been around for forever, but this is the first track that I heard and fell in love with them. I've at least one time made them a track of the week in the Cool Points newsletter. And Shannon and the Clams, like they're timeless. They very much sound of today, but they very much sound of the 50s and 60s or the 80s as well. And The Boy is just super phenomenal song and would have been my song of the year if not for Childish Gambino and This Is America. And it's not just that the message of this song, what he's saying, but the fact that it ended up with a Grammy nomination and on the Grammy nomination CD. So back working at the Exchange, we had to have a new release and someone traded in the Grammy nominee CD right away. And this was the new release we put in all the time. And like Ariana Grande and Maureen Morris, I think like Girl, whatever the track for Maureen Morris, so that was big that year. So like this was a very like typical straight up and down.
Bones was the song, I think.
Yes, which you know what, that album's great too. Like not being a country fan, I think she's phenomenal. But this is a very straight paint by the numbers Grammy nominee. This is the reason why Beyonce has so many Grammy nominations. Like this, we're going to pick the stuff we know type of thing. So for This Is America to make it on there says a lot. And for people to love it, like some of the people in the Exchange that you'd see grooving and singing to this are not the people who would be grooving and singing to Childish Gambino.
It wasn't just like nominated either. Didn't it like sweep the Grammys that year? I think it won 4 of them.
That might be true. I only pay attention to the Grammys when I'm listening to a nominee CD or Beck wins the Grammys.
Yeah, I think
I just don't pay attention to them at all because I think they're all bullshit. But I love that they are able to spread music to people who probably hadn't heard it before. So
I think he swept like Record of the Year, Best Vocal Performance in hip hop and pop or hip hop / pop. Best vocal performance, and then like one other thing. Like he was nominated for 4 for that track and won all 4 of them that he was nominated for that year,
which is good. And this was a really great period because I think this is about this first time the first season of Atlanta came out too, which is just phenomenal.
My favorite show on TV.
Really, really good showing all around for Gambino, and I will always like miss the I am just a rapper era of Childish Gambino because I think it was fun. The wordplay was fun, but it's nice to see him do something. Like the underlying racial issues in this country have always been, and even when he was doing the I'm just a rapper stuff, but it's nice to see him take it further. And it was nice to see people listen to this that wouldn't have listened to it. At the same time, I worry about that it's almost like a 911 is a joke or Fight the Power, and that it's become like too mainstream that people are like, oh no, it's just a great song to dance to, or Oh shit, yeah, I love that hook.
Well, and that's the
Um,
thing. It's one thing to listen to it. It's another thing to do the whole experience, like how he made the video, because the video encapsulates it all.
the video is insane.
Without seeing the video, you're just listening to a song that you're like, all right, cool, this sounds cool. But then you're seeing like the African tribalism that he puts into it. You're seeing the actual societal stuff in America. Like it's just coming to grips. I do a lesson with my freshmen every year on this. It's just about, like knowing roots and identifying things and looking for different pieces. And there's so much cultural shit to pull out of that. That's not just in the US, that's for an entire group of people. And he was so succinct in doing it. And it's like a lesson in sociology boiled down into like 4 minutes and 45 seconds, and it's just absolutely wild.
Yeah.
There are a couple of YouTube videos that break down some of the stuff that's included in it, because when you watch the video, there's so much included, right? And it's easy to pick out some of the more obvious themes, like the upbeat dancing kind of stuff that's going on in the foreground,
Like the
that's
macro
supposed to
dancing,
distract you from like the background stuff going on,
Yep.
and the gun violence and stuff. And again, even like when the first time he turns around and he shoots the choir that's singing, and nobody pays attention to the choir at all, but like the person who takes the gun is like cleaning it as he walks off screen and stuff. Like there's a lot of really obvious things, but there's also some really not obvious things at all that if I hadn't watched like a breakdown, like the individual playing the guitar in the beginning is somebody's father, and I can't remember now, I'm blanking on it. But there are so many things. It's worthwhile to take the time and find an actual breakdown of all of the details that are included in that video, because it is insane and it's brilliant.
So that is actually, I teach freshmen how to do research papers, and that's what I assign them is I want you to watch this music video, and then I want you to tell me where everything came from. I want you to source it. And so when we talk about, informed folks and doing your research, that's where it comes from. I know a lot of them go to those YouTube videos and stuff like that, but then that makes them dive deeper because they go into minstrel videos, they go into, African slave ships, they go into gun culture, like all this shit. And all of a sudden they're like, I don't know what to do with all this. And I'm like, this man took all of this and put it into like 5 minutes. And so, but that teaches them how to do research. And I do that as freshmen so that they can start to have these nuanced discussions moving forward. And it's that music video, since it came out, has actually connected me with my students on levels I never knew was possible, simply because of what they learned by going through it and sourcing it.
Awesome.
Yeah, everything about the song, even like the hook is catchy, but really kind of goofy and bad, which has to be the point to really bring home the message of like, hey, this is what we've had to do. And I mean, Donald Glover's a genius, and he kind of proves it here in ways that he hadn't had a chance to prove it yet. Like,
oh yeah,
which if you hadn't realized by him writing on 30 Rock at such a young age, like he showed it with this is I said episode, but this video I think is just
yeah.
And I struggle so hard not to see him as Troy Barnes.
But even then, why not see him as that? I'm down with that too. So, because that was a great role, and I mean that pretty much brought him to the forefront of everything he's done. So I'll take it.
Are you saying the Derek comedy troupe didn't bring him to the forefront like that?
No,
his Derek comedy stuff is hilarious though, and it's the Chad skit is very, very good.
Well, and I think before now, if you like in our circles, like if you're the guy paying attention to writers on the shows, which I don't think we did as much then as we do now, as widely spread, but like he was best known for that Chad skit before Community, which is kind of insane.
But it's so well done. Like it's such a funny takedown of the culture of just the broism and that kind of almost I hate to shit on all frats, but like that kind of that frat boy mentality and stuff. It's a wonderful takedown of it in a very funny way.
See, now I didn't see that stuff until way later on. I knew him from his shit on the sidewalks where he was just doing covers of songs and stuff on YouTube. Like that's where I found him like years before. And then all of a sudden me and JJ were watching Jimmy Fallon one night, and there he is doing Bonfire. I'm like, what the fuck? So that's how I knew. I didn't know the Chad stuff until way later, where the grainy videos and stuff. So it's quite interesting.
And even the movie Mystery Team, it's
I
funny
really
in a
like
completely
Mystery Team,
different
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why the Mystery Team's not in the music with him as it was in the early like, EPDAs, but even though none of them were good rappers, I enjoyed listening to them with him, like because they're all clever in the same way he is. So
yeah, he's just a genius. My list is almost as short as my short list. I had "Don't Make Me Wait" from Sting and Shaggy because I just can't let that album die. I'll be the one to champion that to whatever island my family eats me off of when I die. Seven Rings and Thank You Next from Ariana. And then this year actually gave me two of my favorite soundtracks, probably the last 10 years. We got the Black Panther soundtrack and the Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack. So I can't let those go unnoticed. Kendrick gave us All the Stars, Big Shot, and Pray For Me, which were huge on there, but a lot of features on that. And then Into the Spider-Verse was just incredible. We had Memories from Tutmouse. Obviously, we had Sunflower. We had Not Scared or Not Afraid from Lil Wayne. I have some songs trying that's name because they're coming up later, but just absolutely incredible albums. And
but was there a Tribe Called Quest?
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't even mean. I meant De La Soul anyway, so never mind. I screwed that up, folks.
However, Zoe and I really bonded over the Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack because not only did she love the movie, but she immediately said, "Hey, can we listen to that music?" And that got us into some awesome musical discussions, and we still listen to that soundtrack start to finish in my car all the time. We had Chun-Li from Nicki Minaj. Feels Like Summer from Childish Gambino. I think people forget that song because of that year. As much as I hate to get Chris Brown out there, Freaky Friday from Lil Dicky, it's just a song that was a banger and it's always out there. Friends Don't from Maddie and Tay, Homesick from Kane Brown. I Got the Juice from Janelle Monáe. I absolutely love that album. The whole album's amazing. I would name every song if I could. In My Blood from my wife's second husband, Shawn Mendes, as she likes to tell me often. As much as I can't stand the dude, In My Feelings and Nice for What, it really bonded my students and I on outings that we had for our summer program where I rode on a bus with them and was subjected to whatever they wanted to listen to. And it was those two songs over and over and over again. However, created a lot of laughs in me teaching them about Run DMC, LL Cool J, and older hip hop so that I could talk about how shitty of a lyricist Drake actually is. And I'd like to think by the end of the summer, they actually realize it. So that was nice.
I think the worst part about how shitty Drake is he's also paying people to write those shitty lyrics. Like,
oh yeah, his ghostwriters, he's so untalented. I just can't stand the dude.
At least Dr. Dre paid Jay-Z. Like,
yeah, and I mean Drake's also shit on people numerous times for having mental health issues and things like that too. So just fuck him overall. But it was a nice bonding experience for me with some students over some shitty music. Photograph from J. Cole, Say Something from Justin Timberlake and my guy Chris Stapleton, Sleepwalkers from Brian Fallon. That was just such an incredible song. Tequila from Dan and Shay. It's an odd song that I wouldn't normally like, but for some reason when it comes on, I bop my head to it and go with it. And then Memories from Tutmouse. And then I have three before I get to my final two. I have OTW On the Way from Khalid. He's one of my favorite artists out right now, but just a great song. Hide from Juice WRLD, Sunflower from Post Malone and Sway Lee. That song really just, Zoe called that our song because it would pop on and we're both instantly happy. And it's to this day, so a few years later, still our song. And then I tied for Song of the Year. I wasn't able to separate the personal from the responsibility part. This is America, Childish Gambino definitely came up for me, but also Ballad of a Poet from Our Lady Peace. Rain's tribute to Gordy. I just can't let it go unnoticed. And it's something where many people grieved when Gordy passed, and Rain told a tale of how he met his wife at a concert of the Hip and what Gordy meant to him and them. But this is also the song I listened to after our basement was finished, and I was painting. It was the first time I heard it. I was painting our basement, the walls and all that stuff. And I just listened to the song on repeat. I think I was paying for like 6 hours. So I listened to it on repeat for like 6 hours. And it's hands down my favorite LADP song at this point, which is one of my favorite bands, you guys know. But just the lyrics are so tender and the feeling is there. And though I do think This Is America is the most telling and best song of the year, my song to come out of that year was definitely Ballad of a Poet, because I just couldn't let that go. And it just meant so much, especially, I identify with a lot of the hip lyrics and just, Gordy's passing, all that stuff. And it just really touched me in a way that I had no idea until I found that I'd repeated the song. I don't even know how many times, where I'm just rolling this paint roller, and I must have listened to that song like 80 times in a row. And so I'm tight. I have 2 songs of the year. I took the easy way out, maybe, but it was a painful choice, because in my head, This Is America song of the year. In my heart, Ballad of a Poet was just my song of the year. So I'm gonna throw 2 out there.
Well, Joe, I did like half of that since we just kind of split.
Yep.
But let's shame Chirp, because he's the only one other than Dan Askey who kind of doesn't play along, just plays. He's the only one who did not mention This Is America. So damn you, Chirp.
Yeah, I couldn't make a choice. It was just a lot of people didn't listen to that Somethingness album from Our Lady Peace, but it's, in my opinion, like top 3 of theirs. So I would encourage anybody to listen to that if you're an Our Lady Peace fan or a fan of the earlier stuff and just kind of fell off. That was probably their most well-crafted, most heartfelt lyric album. So definitely check it out.
I don't think I could say I fell off. I like vanished from the face of the earth of Our Lady Peace after some of the old stuff. So
yeah,
I'll have to go back and check that album out.
A lot of people did. That song right there is just one that I will say, if you're a writer or a literature fan, it feels like somebody's reading a poem to you. I'll just say that it's Ballad of a Poet, so it makes sense, I guess. But it's a fucking beautiful song. So, gents, we've entered into 2019 next.
Uh-huh.
And then we need the folks at home to decide what was the song of the decade. And I think the Survey Monkey thing worked great last time, so we'll roll with that. Before we sign off here, any last words?
Nope.
I mean, welcome to the new year, folks.
Welcome to the new year, and make this the year that you actually give folks some attention and love when they need it, as opposed to shitting on them for things they're experiencing. I believe that there's going to be a Fun with Friends episode to talk about this stuff, but if somebody's going through something, they're really going through something, they don't need you to shit on them. They need love and support, and that goes a long way, even if it means not sharing a stupid meme or gif. So keep that in mind as you travel throughout the year, whether it's a celebrity or a person you know.
Yeah.
And I know you're still not feeling 100% dance, to take care of yourself, feel better.
Thank you. Eventually this will go away, or just prop me up Weekend at Bernie's style and have Zoe do my takes.
I mean, even if you feel better, that's not a bad episode to do on time.
That's very true. All right, gents, I shall see you next week.
All right, see you, Dan.